Chapter 12. The Frozen Path. Snow. Soren didn't like it. The night before, it had merely dusted the trees like a light frost, but by midday, it was clear this was no passing flurry. The further they climbed, the deeper it became, piling in drifts against the trunks and sinking underfoot. The horses trudged along, their breath misting in the air, and even Kip, usually unbothered by anything, seemed reluctant to bound ahead. Tobin, however, was delighted. "This is great," he called, catching snowflakes on his tongue. Soren, shivering under his cloak, gave him a long, unimpressed stare. "You are an idiot." An idiot who isn't freezing because he knows how to layer properly. Soren resisted the urge to shove him face first into the nearest snowbank. The climb was slow. The terrain steepened, forcing them to zigzag along narrow paths, and the cold made everything worse. The wind howled between the peaks, slicing through their cloaks like knives, and every morning their supplies seemed to dwindle faster than expected. "Maybe we should go back," Tobin muttered one evening, as they huddled around a pathetic excuse for a fire. "Go back where?" Soren asked. "To the witch?" Tobin thought about it. "She did offer food. She also tried to kill you. Details." Soren rolled his eyes. The reality was, turning back wasn't an option. They had passed the point of no return days ago. They had to push forward. Chapter 13. The First Loss. The morning started like the rest, cold, miserable, and painfully slow. Until Tobin screamed. Soren whipped around, sword half drawn. "Tobin?" His brother wasn't looking at him. He was crouched in the snow, shaking Greta's unmoving form. "She won't wake up." Soren moved closer, his stomach sinking. The mare's body was stiff, half buried in fresh snow. His worst fear was confirmed the moment he laid a hand against her side. She was gone. The cold had stolen her in the night. Tobin knelt there for a long moment, staring at her, as if sheer will alone could bring her back. Soren exhaled, the cold air burning his lungs, then set a firm hand on his brother's shoulder. "We have to go," he said quietly. Tobin didn't argue. He simply stood, wiped at his nose, and trudged back to Soren's horse without a word. The silence that followed was heavy. The cold no longer just chilled, it bit. Soren noticed his brother shivering violently as they rode. By the next morning, he was burning up with fever. Chapter 14. Kurokita. Soren was exhausted. Every breath sent knives through his chest. His limbs were heavy, his thoughts clouded. Somewhere in the distance he swore he could smell smoke. Fires, warmth. It had to be a trick, a cruel trick of the mountains. But then he saw them, houses, hazy, indistinct forms in the swirling snow. The last thing he remembered was urging his horse forward. Tobin slumped against him, his small frame unnervingly still. Then, nothing. Soren woke to warmth, soft blankets, a real bed, a roof above his head. His mind felt sluggish, but the scent of herbs filled the air. Someone was moving nearby. A woman, cloaked in white, stood by a small pot, stirring something fragrant. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse. The woman turned but did not speak. She bowed slightly, then left the room. A moment later, an elderly man entered. Long grey beard, dressed in white, with a red and gold sash draped over his shoulders. "You are on the holy mountain of Taikangai," the man said. "This village is called Kurokita." Soren forced himself upright. "Where is my brother?" The man folded his hands. "He is very ill, but he is being cared for." Soren exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. He let himself fall back into the pillows. Safe. For now. Chapter 15. A Winter of Silence. They stayed. There was no choice. Tobin needed time to recover, and the villagers insisted they rest through the winter. The people of Kurokita were different. The women dressed in white, their faces calm but unreadable. They never spoke, only communicated through nods and gestures. The men too seemed distant, spending their days in prayer, tending to gardens, or brewing strange potions. Soren had never seen anything like it. Tobin, of course, hated every second of it. "There's no meat," he complained under his breath one night as they ate their usual vegetable stew. Soren gave him a warning glance. "They can probably hear you. Then maybe they'll take pity on me and roast a chicken." But while Tobin suffered, Soren found himself drawn in. The quiet was peaceful. The people, though distant at first, were kind. And then there was Shanglang. She was an herbalist, younger than most of the villagers, with an easy smile and dark eyes that seemed to see right through him. She taught him about the plants they used, the teas that healed, and the ways of the mountain people. He found himself seeking her company more and more. "You're different from most outsiders," she said one evening as they walked through the frost-covered gardens. "How so?" "You listen." Soren blinked. "Most people don't?" She smiled. "Most people only want to speak." He had no response to that. As spring approached, so too did their departure. Tobin was beyond ready to leave. Soren, though, wasn't so sure anymore. Chapter